They say you'll know when it's time to walk away, but what if you've spent so long hoping, adjusting and holding on that you no longer trust your own silence? Leaving a relationship isn't just about timing, it's about truth. And the hardest truth to face is the one you've been carrying in your chest for months, maybe even years. You don't want this to end. If you did, you would have left already. What you want is for it to feel right again. But if you're being honest with yourself, you know it doesn't. Not consistently, not quietly, not in the way your heart can rest in. You don't feel seen. You don't feel safe. You've been giving, stretching, hoping, waiting for something to shift. And deep down, you're not even asking for much. You'd read the books. You'd sit in therapy. You'd work through the hard stuff if they were willing to meet you there. But they're not. Because to them, everything feels fine, as long as you keep swallowing your pain in silence. Today's not about telling you something new. It's about reminding you of what you already know, but may have forgotten how to trust. That love without effort is just sentiment, and a relationship where only one person shows up isn't a relationship at all. If you're ready to hear the truth behind when it's time to let go, and what it really means to choose yourself, then stay with me. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and let's get into it. 1. The truth about relationships. We grow up hearing that love conquers all, that as long as two people love each other, everything else will fall into place. But when real life arrives, with its stress, miscommunication, emotional wounds, and unmet needs, most of us learn the truth the hard way. Love, by itself, is never enough to sustain a relationship. You can love someone deeply. You can think about them constantly, want the best for them, and still feel incredibly alone lying next to them, because love without effort is hollow. It might feel intense at first, but it cannot carry the weight of daily disconnection. The truth is, a relationship doesn't run on emotion, it runs on intention. It runs on showing up. Think about it this way. If you stopped showing up to your job, what would happen? You'd be fired. Even if you told your boss, "But I love this job, I'd do anything for it," they'd still say, "Yeah, but you didn't show up." And they'd be right, because passion without presence means nothing in the long run. That's exactly what love without consistent action looks like. It sounds romantic, it sounds like poetry, but it ends in silence. Because no matter how many times someone says, "I love you," if they're not there when it matters, when you're hurting, when you need support, when compromise and growth are required, then those words lose their meaning. A real relationship asks for more than declarations. It demands effort, daily effort. It calls for emotional presence, vulnerability, accountability, and shared responsibility. That means listening when it's inconvenient, apologizing when you've messed up, learning how your partner feels loved, and not brushing it off because it's different from how you express it. But here's the part too many people ignore. If only one person is doing all that work, then it's not a relationship anymore. It's a rescue mission, and eventually, the one trying to save it ends up drowning too. You start carrying the weight of their emotional avoidance. You become the one who always initiates the hard conversations, who keeps the connection alive, who manages both your needs and theirs. And it drains you, slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize you've given everything and received almost nothing that truly nourished you in return. So no, love isn't enough. And saying "I love you" doesn't give anyone a pass to stop showing up, stop trying, or stop growing. A lasting relationship is built by two people choosing over and over to show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, and it's only real when it's followed by action. 2. When care feels one-sided. There's a kind of loneliness that cuts deeper than being alone. It's the kind you feel when you're sitting next to someone you love, giving them your heart, your energy, your patience, and yet it feels like you're invisible. You start to notice the imbalance quietly. You're the one who brings up the hard conversations, even though they make you feel vulnerable. You're the one who apologizes first, even when you're not sure what you did wrong. You carry both your emotions and theirs, always trying to keep the peace, to keep the connection alive. And deep down, you're tired, exhausted really. Not just from the effort, but from the silence you get in return. Maybe they're not mean, maybe they're not outwardly abusive, but they are careless. And that carelessness stings in a different way. They rarely ask how you're really doing. They don't ask follow-up questions when you open up. They don't seem curious about your inner world, your thoughts, your worries, your dreams. And when something does hurt you, they minimize it. Or worse, they mock it, turn it into a joke, make you feel like you're overreacting, that your pain is inconvenient. But here's a hard truth to sit with. They can say they love you and still not have the capacity to live out what that word truly means. Because love, real love, requires empathy. It requires effort. It requires accountability. Without those things, love becomes hollow. It's not love anymore. It's convenience. It's emotional comfort for them, dressed up as connection. And you're the one keeping it alive. So you have to ask yourself, brutally, honestly, am I being loved, or am I simply being tolerated? Am I cherished for who I am, or am I only appreciated for how easy I make their life? One-sided care doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like absence. Sometimes it looks like someone who only shows up when they need you, but not when you need them. Someone who wants the benefits of closeness without the responsibility of being emotionally available. If you feel like you're doing all the emotional lifting, you probably are. And it's not because you're too much, it's because they're offering too little. And the longer you accept that imbalance, the more it convinces you that your needs are unreasonable, when in fact, they're just unmet. What's even more painful is realizing that love isn't the issue, capacity is. They may care about you, but if they can't show up for your heart in the ways that matter, if they can't hold space for your hurt without turning it into shame, then the connection will continue to leave you feeling unseen. You deserve someone who doesn't just say they care. You deserve someone who learns what caring for you actually looks like and shows up to do it without being begged. Because love that makes you feel like you're too much was never love to begin with. 3. The real reason you stay. People don't stay in painful relationships because they're weak. They stay because part of them still believes in the story they once imagined, the version where things get better, where love finds its rhythm again, where the warmth returns. They stay because they remember the beginning, and they're holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, it can feel like that again. They stay because they're hopeful. Hopeful that one more act of patience, one more apology, one more sacrifice might finally unlock the change they've been longing for. They tell themselves, if I can just be a little more understanding, if I can phrase it differently next time, if I can soften the blow, hold back my frustration, let go of another need, maybe they'll finally get it. But buried underneath that hope is something else, something heavier, fear. Fear of starting over at 37, 41 or 44, with a scarred heart and a story that didn't end the way they thought it would. Fear of disrupting the family. Fear of facing holidays alone. Fear of having to explain to others why they left someone everyone else thought was good enough. Fear of the unknown is often more paralyzing than the pain we're used to. So you stay. You minimize your needs. You rationalize the distance. You talk yourself out of your own loneliness. And slowly, piece by piece, You begin to disappear inside a relationship that no longer reflects who you are or what you need. You give up more and more of yourself to protect someone who won't even meet you halfway. And in the process, you start forgetting how to be fully you. Ask yourself, how many parts of yourself have you silenced to keep the peace? How often do you shrink your voice, your feelings, your truth, just to avoid another cold stare or dismissive reply? How long have you been trying to keep something alive that only one of you seems willing to fight for? Here's the truth. If you have to dim your light just to be tolerated, that's not love. That's survival. And love was never meant to feel like a battle where only one side is fighting. It was never meant to ask you to betray your own needs to keep someone else comfortable. There's nothing noble about staying in a place where you're slowly eroding to make the other person feel whole. Self-sacrifice becomes self-betrayal when it's one-sided. Staying hopeful is beautiful, but when hope turns into denial, it becomes a prison. Maybe you haven't left because you still believe there's something worth saving. And that belief says a lot about your heart, how deep it loves, how hard it holds on. But the question isn't whether they are worth the effort. The real question is, are you worth more than the version of yourself you've had to become just to stay? 4. The signals you need to hear from within. Your body always knows the truth before your mind is willing to admit it. That quiet anger that rises when you're dismissed, the tightening in your chest when they brush off your feelings, the hollow feeling after yet another conversation that ends with you questioning your worth. That's not drama. That's your nervous system trying to get your attention. Anger, as uncomfortable as it is, isn't always destructive. Sometimes it's a teacher. Resentment isn't just bitterness. It's a siren, a flashing red light screaming that something important has been ignored for far too long. And emotional disconnection? It's not a passing phase you wait out. It's a symptom. It's the byproduct of unmet needs, unspoken truths, and repeated invalidation. It's what happens when one person keeps reaching out and the other keeps pulling away. When you constantly feel like you're too much, just for needing reassurance, for craving emotional safety, for wanting to feel seen and heard, you start to internalize the belief that you are the problem. But you're not. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person. If you've found yourself censoring your emotions, walking on eggshells, or avoiding honesty just to keep things calm, you need to understand this. That's not peace. That's self-erasure. And the longer you do it, the more you vanish inside the shell of a person you used to be. The hardest moment in any relationship is admitting what your soul already knows. This doesn't work for me anymore. Those words carry weight. They land in your chest like a truth you tried to outrun. But once they're spoken, even through tears, even if your voice shakes, something inside you exhales. Finally, because the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is freeing. It ends the pretending. It stops the cycle of silence and suppression. It gives you back your voice, your power, and the right to choose a life that actually honors your heart. Listening to your inner signals is not selfish, it's sacred. Your intuition has been whispering to you in all the small ways, through exhaustion, anxiety, apathy, telling you something isn't right, and the moment you stop silencing it is the moment you begin to come home to yourself. You don't need permission to outgrow a relationship that no longer nurtures you. You just need the courage to say what you already feel. I deserve more than this, and I'm ready to stop betraying myself to protect something that refuses to protect me back. 5. When it's time to walk away, there's a moment, quiet, often unspoken, when your heart knows it's done. Not because it stopped caring, but because it's tired of caring alone. You've waited. You've been patient. You've believed in their potential, clung to the early memories and convinced yourself that if you just held on a little longer, the version of them you once saw would return. But there comes a point where continuing to wait is no longer hopeful. It's harmful. You can only bend so far before you break. And sometimes love becomes a cage we decorate with good intentions. But at its core, it's still confinement. Because real love doesn't ask you to beg for the bare minimum. It doesn't punish your honesty or mock your needs. It doesn't leave you apologizing for your pain or questioning whether you're worthy of affection. If your truth is met with silence, sarcasm, or blame, if being vulnerable turns into ammunition they use against you, if you constantly feel like you're the only one keeping the connection alive, that's not love. That's emotional poverty. That's you starving in a space that was supposed to nourish you. So ask yourself the question you've been avoiding. Why are you the only one doing the work to save something they're clearly willing to let slip away? Why are you investing everything into a relationship with someone who won't even match your effort with basic respect? Love that's one-sided will never lead to peace. All paths in a relationship have a destination. And when the path is paved with imbalance, avoidance, and emotional neglect, it only ends one way: resentment, exhaustion, and the quiet erosion of your self-worth. You deserve more than someone who only loves the version of you that stays silent. You deserve more than walking on emotional eggshells while carrying both hearts on your back. You deserve a relationship where honesty isn't punished, where your needs don't make you a burden, and where you're not constantly proving your value just to feel wanted. Walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself when someone else refuses to. It's honoring reality over potential and peace over performance. And when you finally do, when you let go of what's slowly breaking you, you don't just save yourself, you return to yourself. And that's where real love begins again. Not with them, with you. 6. What you deserve. You don't need a perfect partner. You don't need someone who gets everything right, never makes mistakes, or reads your mind. What you need is someone who makes you feel emotionally safe. Someone who's willing to learn you, not just love you in theory, but love you in a way that lands, that reaches your heart in the way it understands love. Love isn't supposed to feel like a test. It's not meant to make you feel like you're constantly trying to earn your place. It's not supposed to make you question your worth or tiptoe around your needs just to stay in someone's good graces. Love should feel like coming home. It should feel like a soft place to land. It should expand who you are, not make you shrink to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You deserve someone who doesn't just show affection when it's convenient. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Someone who leans in when conflict arises instead of shutting down or turning cold. You deserve a partner who is curious about your inner world, who listens, not to respond but to understand. Someone who wants to grow with you, not just benefit from your presence while offering little in return. If you find yourself constantly overcompensating, giving more and more of yourself to make up for their emotional absence, that's not love. That's a slow form of self-betrayal. And the more you do it, the more you begin to believe that love has to hurt, or that you have to prove yourself worthy of staying. But that's not how real connection works. Real love is reciprocal. It's not perfect, but it's intentional. It doesn't always get it right, but it always comes back to the table with humility and care. You should never feel like you have to beg for the basics: kindness, attention, support, being heard. Because the moment you start pouring yourself into someone who takes you for granted, hoping that more effort will finally be enough, you're not being devoted. You're slowly erasing yourself. And that's not love. It's survival in disguise. What you deserve is simple but sacred. To be met where you are, to be held in your truth, to be loved in a way that feels safe even when life is messy. Not because you're perfect, but because you're worth showing up for, over and over, with presence, respect, and care. That is not too much to ask. That is the bare minimum of love done right. 7. Lessons, growth, and the road ahead. Some lessons don't come gently. They come through ache, through staying too long in places we outgrew, through giving more than we had, just to feel wanted. Many of us learned the hard way, by ignoring the early red flags because we were desperate to be chosen. We wanted to believe in the good. We held on to potential instead of paying attention to patterns. We called inconsistency complexity. We mistook manipulation for passion. We convinced ourselves that emotional confusion was a sign of deep connection, when really it was the absence of stability and care. And in the process, we lost pieces of ourselves. Not all at once, but in small, quiet ways. Every time we silenced our needs to avoid another argument, every time we rationalized their neglect as normal. But here's what you need to remember now. You are not too much. Your needs are not a burden. Your honesty is not dramatic. You are not wrong for wanting clarity, care, and emotional depth. You're not difficult for wanting to be loved with consistency instead of intensity that comes and goes. That isn't asking for too much. That's asking for the bare minimum of mutual respect. The truth is, we've spent too long blaming ourselves for wanting more than scraps, for feeling like we had to earn love by shrinking, sacrificing, or staying silent. And that cycle only ends when we stop abandoning ourselves to protect someone else's comfort. Growth begins the moment we say, I deserve more than this, and I'm no longer willing to trade my peace for proximity. You're allowed to raise your standards, not to punish the other person, but to protect your own spirit. Because love shouldn't cost you your dignity. It shouldn't require you to constantly explain why you're hurting. And it definitely shouldn't require you to become less just to keep the peace. If the relationship doesn't rise with you, if it can't evolve as you grow, then maybe it wasn't meant to stay. Maybe its purpose was to wake you up, to teach you what you will no longer accept, to show you what love isn't, so that one day when real love comes, you'll recognize it, not by how it excites your nervous system, but by how calmly it holds your heart. Some relationships aren't meant to last. They're meant to shift something inside you. And if this one has brought you to the point of self-reflection, of reclaiming your voice, of standing a little taller than before, then it didn't break you. It broke you open. And that, too, is love's strange gift. Summary. Maybe you've known for a while, but this is the moment you finally say it out loud. This relationship, as it exists right now, is over. Maybe it didn't end in a single conversation or a single mistake. Maybe it ended slowly, almost invisibly, through forgotten efforts, unspoken resentments, and all the times you stayed silent just to keep the peace. You tried, you held on, you gave more than anyone saw, and now you're standing in the quiet truth of what your heart has known for some time. But here's what's not over. Your story doesn't end with this chapter. Your ability to feel deeply, to love with your whole heart, to rebuild a life of peace and clarity that still belongs to you. Your worth was never measured by how much they saw, how much they returned, or how long they stayed. You will no longer accept emotional breadcrumbs and call it connection. You will no longer minimize your needs to avoid being called needy. You will no longer carry both sides of a relationship while pretending it still feels mutual. From this moment on, you choose respectful honesty over silent suffering. You choose boundaries over chaos. You choose self-respect over fear of being alone. You will no longer make space for people who punish your vulnerability, mock your emotions, or ask you to shrink to stay. Let them be who they choose to be. You're done trying to change them. You're done hoping they'll wake up and suddenly understand the weight you've been carrying. That's not your work anymore. Your work now is you, because you're no longer someone who begs to be loved right. You are someone who walks away when love begins to feel like survival. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't your breaking point, it's your awakening. I hope this helped you see your truth more clearly, where the pain began and what healing could truly look like. If both of you are willing, change is still possible. But it takes courage, on both sides. If this message spoke to your heart, like the video, subscribe to Stoic Station and stay with us on this journey of growth and understanding.